It's like the smoothest this recording device has ever started. Anyway, you kind of had to be here to see that. Kind of had to be here to enjoy that. One way or the other, you're here now. This is Inside Indiana Overtime. This is Alex McCarthy. I'm Zach Osterman. We're talking about the lovely and talented Samantha DeWitt just handed us something quotes. We'll just read you Tim Miles quotes. How's that sound for the next 5 minutes? We're here to talk about Indiana 76, Nebraska 47. Certainly, just kind of as expected tonight for Indiana. Nebraska is not a great team. They're not an experienced team. I would hesitate to say that they're in a rebuild because I'm not sure where they were before. But I think I saw a stat tonight, or just kind of a note tonight, that only 2 players on Nebraska's team this year even played in that win at home against Indiana last year. So, this is clearly a team that new coach, new direction, new everything. And Indiana, after kind of a sluggish first half, that they still never, Nebraska was kind of controlling the pace, but you really still never got the feeling Indiana was uncomfortable. They just kind of put them in a hole in the second and a 29-point victory. Christian Watford goes for 13 and 11. Victor Oladipo goes for 13 and 8. Cody Zeller scores 13 second-half points in 9 minutes, scores 16 and 18 minutes overall, shoots 8 of 11 from the free throw line. And this really is kind of just a vintage Indiana, balanced all the way around. 6 guys scored at least 8 points. They shoot almost 46% from the floor. They shoot 50% from behind the arc. They shoot 29 free throws to Nebraska's 11. They win the rebounding battle by 12. Nebraska's assist-to-turnover ratio was 1-5 tonight. 3 assists, 15 turnovers.
And for a while, it was infinite. They ended the first half with 10 turnovers.
They picked up their first assist, I think, at like 7:14 or maybe 7:46.
It was like right before the under 8.
Yeah,
the final under 8.
They actually picked them up in consecutive possessions at like 7:16 or 7:14 or something like that, and then right after that, and then they had another one on their last basket of the game to get to 3 assists. Yes. Anyway, this really was just kind of job done for Indiana, and that's what these games have to be. Only one player played more than 30 minutes or more, only have to be at Purdue on Saturday, have to be just pretty much like this.
Yeah, you have to win these games kind of convincingly, and especially since they're at home. They beat Purdue in a hostile environment by almost 40.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got.
They probably won't do that. Realistically,
you can't expect a 97-60 win.
Mm-hmm.
You can't expect them to put together a 40 minutes like they did a couple weeks ago at Purdue, just because.
Right. No, you don't just clock up 37-point conference victories, especially not against a Matt Painter coach team. But anyway.
Right. And they almost win by 30 here, and they move on to Purdue, who again is not, they're not really a bottom tier team, but they're certainly not a top tier team.
They're stuck in the middle. I think about a week ago, they had not beaten a team ahead of them in the Big Ten standings, and they were undefeated against teams below them in the league, and winless against teams above them in the league. So I think, and that was a week and a half ago, so that stat might have changed. I know they're at Illinois tonight, and I believe Illinois is still behind them in the conference standings, but was winning by some margin, at least in the first half when I last saw the score. So that might change tonight if it hasn't already. But they are. They're just kind of middle of the road.
Yeah, they're just okay. They're just kind of between phases right now.
They're average. They're very average. Yeah. But Indiana, there is, just to get it out of the way anyway, there's always a certain pressure. This team's never been here before. If they beat Purdue and then win one more game, if they win out at home, they'll win 2 more games than they did a year ago. If they beat Purdue, then they will match their Big Ten win total from a season ago. They went 11-7. They would be 11-2 if they beat Purdue. But, there's an element of you want to see this team, even if they don't do it pretty for 40 minutes, win the way it should win. Or win games it should win. Take care of business when it should. It's unscientific or sort of unscientific, but people have kind of pointed out that of all of the national title contenders so far, anyway, Indiana's the only one without a really glaring loss.
Yeah. Yeah,
You
we
know,
saw
I
it
mean,
from Michigan.
close against Butler. Butler in and of itself a pretty good team. Close against Wisconsin again, in and of itself a pretty good team.
And then obviously
And
close against Illinois.
yeah, you know, and obviously Indiana could have done things in each of those games that would have made them wins. I mean, it wasn't like they were. I mean, they made mistakes in each of those wins. There's no doubt. Each of those wins raised questions, but you know, they're the only one. I mean, Duke took that beating at Miami. Miami's lost to Florida Gulf Coast. You know, Florida had the loss at Arkansas. So the point is that Indiana, so far anyway, is the one team that really doesn't have just kind of an inexplicable blemish on its record. And so nights like this need to be easy. And really, you know, there's just kind of an element of overcoming the pressure, I guess.
Yeah. Weeks like this really need to be, you know,
Yeah,
when you have two
this
games
is Indiana's
at home
last. I mean, you know, after Purdue, it's Minnesota. It's at Michigan State, at Minnesota, Iowa, Ohio State, at Michigan. So this is kind of that last chance to breathe.
Yeah, a little bit. Last chance for us to, see them kind of take their starters out with 5 minutes to go. You would assume for the rest of the conference.
Maybe.
But I mean, yeah, tonight they just kind of, like you said, they came out not necessarily flat, but things just didn't go well for them for the first 10 minutes. I mean, they missed, I think, 8 of their first 10 shots.
Yeah.
And there were some just kind of weird decisions on offense in terms of possessions where, they didn't really make, that one more pass, or they didn't work it inside or inside out enough. And there were just a couple just kind of unsure almost possessions where they came away empty.
I think really kind of one of the things that happened was Nebraska really packed the paint, didn't let Zeller get involved early. And I mean, you could tell because both Brandon Ubel and Nebraska's rather space-making backup forward Andre Almeida, who I believe is listed at 314 pounds, both had 2 fouls like within the first 5 minutes or 4 minutes or something like that.
Yeah, that's a lot.
But Nebraska really kind of sank back on defense and made Indiana shoot over them early. And I think that there were some moments where Indiana felt like it had gotten good shots, not based on the way the ball was moving, but based on the fact that Nebraska was willing to give them, I mean, not open jumpers, but semi-open jumpers. Makeable shots. That's a good way to put it. And those shots weren't going down early. So then Cody Zeller gets into a little bit of foul trouble. Basically what happens is Indiana kind of starts forcing its way to the free throw line. I think they scored their last 6 points from the free throw line in the first half, scored 13 of their 27 points from the free throw line overall in the first half. And that was kind of how they took control of the game at the end of the first half, and then a 7-0 run at the start of the second half. Basically, once Indiana, after kind of that sluggishness at the beginning, once Indiana started making shots, that was kind of it. That was the moment when Nebraska had to start coming out on defense, and that opened things up in terms of the way Indiana used its high pick and rolls. That allowed Indiana's ball movement to create more opportunities and things like that. And it allowed them to get the ball inside to Watford, certainly to Zeller when he came back in, because he picked up a third foul early in the second half and then sat down. Tom Crean said he was playing a little bit of time and score with Zeller with that third foul, just didn't want him to pick up a fourth too quickly and just totally be taken out of the game plan. But, and I hate to treat Nebraska like North Dakota State or some of these teams that we saw early in the year, but this did have a little bit of a feel to it of Indiana maybe proving that it can play a certain way, and we have more from Samantha DeWig. More quotes. We will read you all sorts of quotes tonight. It's the second time you bring us quotes, but Nebraska definitely killed the pace in that first half, and part of that again was just that Indiana was maybe not opening things up with made shots.
That was really
but
the big thing that was missing. For them.
One way or the other, the pace did slow down. And we saw this in the second half against Ohio State. Indiana only took 17 shots. They definitely killed the pace of that game in the second half. They ran when it was there for them, but they were content to make Ohio State work for 25 seconds of the shot clock when, and maybe in those last 10 minutes in particular, when they were just kind of trying to control the game, they did it very well. And again, here's another instance. Indiana probably won't win a lot of 40-minute games, or probably won't win a lot of postseason games that are played at that pace for 40 minutes. But that Indiana can play at that pace for
as long as
20 minutes. Can grind through a little bit if the shots aren't falling, if they're having a little bit more trouble than usual, kind of trying to figure out where to start their offense or how to turn. Because Nebraska actually, they committed 15 turnovers tonight. Their turnover percentage was like top 35 in the country coming into tonight. So that's one of the few things they do well is they don't turn the ball over that much. They do not allow teams to really get going off of turnovers. And Indiana only had actually 18 points for 15 turnovers. I mean, 18 points, that's not bad. But when you consider how good Nebraska is statistically, that's really probably even better. And I think, you know, again, it's just kind of one of these where maybe we're seeing in spurts that Indiana can win, can at least keep games competitive, can at least control games at a different pace while they figure out how to accelerate.
Yeah, because I mean, they were still figuring out ways to, when they were being both outshot and out-rebounded, for the first 10 or 15 minutes, they were still figuring out ways to constantly be within 3 or 4 points. And then, there's that, I think, like 3-minute span where they went on a 10-0 run, and that's kind of where they took off. So, really, they just stayed with Nebraska and stayed within striking distance until those shots started falling. We saw Sheehy make his little runner, and then Farrell and Oladipo hit back-to-back threes, and it was kind of off to the races after that. And they, took a lead into halftime, and then came out and immediately, as Green was saying after the game, grabbed the momentum. He was saying that, at the beginning of every half, regardless of the score, someone needs to take control of that game, and they immediately did. They went on a 7-0 run, and I think a minute and a half.
It was exactly 90 seconds when Tim Miles called
18:30.
timeout.
Yeah, where they came out and they kind of just made sure that this would be that they would play this half the way they wanted to play that half. And Christian Watford also said after the game that he felt that like they let Nebraska kind of lure them in and kind of drag them down into their style, and how they just didn't allow them to do that at all in the second half. And part of that was, Nebraska having to dig itself out of a hole, or try and dig itself out of a hole a little bit. And part of it was just, Zeller, Wofford, Oladipo, those guys, just kind of forcing, just imposing their will, as some would say, in that second half, and really forcing Nebraska to try and keep up with them, which obviously they couldn't.
Yeah, I mean, it really was just kind of I don't want to say it was a willingness to play at Nebraska's pace, but it was an ability to match that and still control the game. I mean, Nebraska only shot, they were 0 of 8 from behind the arc in the first half. They had no assists. I think they had 10 turnovers, 7 of 17 from the floor, and they only scored 18 points. So, I mean, even if you're struggling, even if the other team is controlling the pace, you will absolutely take that half if you're Tom Crean, defensively especially. I mean, that's just an excellent half, and I think that's one of the differences between the differences. I don't want to say they're marginal between last year and this year, because last year's team was good. Last year's team went to the Sweet 16. Last year's team won 27 games, 24 of them in the regular season. But if you're looking for little differences between last year's team and this year's team, I think one of them is the ability to play at a different pace, to play at different speeds, and also really to affect the pace of the game in different ways, whether it be through rebounding, through free throw shooting. Because if you shoot a bunch of free throws and you score a bunch of points from the free throw line, then you will accelerate a team's offense, because you'll start putting distance between them. Certainly with turnovers, I think that if you're looking for the little things that maybe depending on the way these next few weeks play out, turn a 24-win team into a 25 or 26-win team just in the regular season, I think that's one of them, is just these little improvements that allow Indiana to control the game, even when it's not going their way, even when it's not really being played at their pace. Don't want to take too much time here, but just run it down. I mean, Christian Watford has now scored in double figures in every single Big Ten game, all 12, 13 and 11 tonight. It was not quite what it was at Ohio State with him, and I think that was as much just kind of the overall team performance as it was him. I think that just things worked out, particularly in the first half, such that Indiana did have to grind it a little bit, and wasn't going to be able to get kind of the free-flowing points that it gets a lot of the time, because Watford is usually kind of the second option a lot. But it was interesting tonight because I felt like tonight he wasn't. I felt like tonight, he hit a three with a hand in his face, which I don't think I'd ever seen him do before. I'm sure he's probably done it, but usually he's a trailer catch and shoot three. He's a kick out 3-point shooter. He's not a guy that kind of sizes up a shot with a guy with a defender right in his face and then takes it and hits it. We saw this in the second half against Ohio State, and I think we saw it again tonight. He was driving with more confidence toward the rim. He made one absolutely gorgeous, just post up, seal, spin, hook shot that should have counted. It was waved off. It was called a travel. It did not look like a travel. Now he drew a foul on what was probably a travel, spinning into the lane a couple minutes later, and maybe that was just the balancing act. But it seems like we're seeing maybe a more confident, consistent Watford, who understands. In the past, I think Watford has always been a player who could score, but I think now he's a player who understands how to get his points without killing the rest of the offense. He understands how to get his points within the frame of the offense and how to be productive every single night, not just some nights, not just 50 or 60% of his team's games, but understands how to meet a certain baseline level of production every single night while getting his points and his rebounds and all that through the framework of the offense. So he's efficient, he's productive, and he contributes to the overall team success. You never feel like, hey, he's just going for his points, or he's just at this point Watford's just out for himself. You don't feel like that. No. And I'm not saying he was selfish in the past, but I think there's really kind of a recognition with him.
Yeah, he's just really starting to figure it out. And we've seen that all year from Zeller too, where you look up at the box score with a few minutes left and you realize, oh, Zeller has 15 points or something, where he just flows and fits so well into what they're trying to do on offense that both he and Watford now have just figured out ways to really just quiet, almost have quiet 15, 16 point nights, and that's something that they need out of a number 2 guy like Watford, and even Oladipo has had a couple of those times where he's really he's just so much more selective. He's just so much more Oladipo is just he's figuring out as well just where he fits in and where his opportunities are. Especially with his 3-point shooting, it's just the improvement there has just been outrageous for Oladipo, and then for Watford as well. He's always been a very good 3-point shooter, and this year he's really figured out a way to be a really terrifying 3-point shooter for opponents. Twice in the past 5 games he set his career high for 4 3-pointers in the game, and then against Ohio State I think he matched it again. So he's just really getting people's attention right now by, like you said, almost not getting their attention, just getting his points consistently, and like you said, in every Big Ten game he's had double
well,
points.
And again, it feels like it's all coming naturally. It's all coming organically within the offense. Whereas there have been times in the last year or two where you'd see him go out and he'd shoot 2 of 9. He'd get 11 points because he went to the free throw line a lot, and obviously that's a big part of it too. Tom Crean has talked ad nauseum about how much better he is at recognizing the importance of getting to the free throw line, at recognizing how to get there, and just how productive he is there. But he's scoring within the offense, and I think that's making a big difference because really there's no player I think offensively that is as dynamic as Watford on this team. Just in the sense of his ability to post up, his ability to shoot threes, his ability to drive the ball if he's got the right defensive matchup. He's become a very, very, very good rebounder. He's continues to grow, I think, as a guy who can defend multiple positions. We said that last year, and I think we absolutely see that again this year. But offensively, we're not seeing a lot of nights where he's forcing it anymore. He's figured out how to get those same points on less shots, on better shots. He's figured out just kind of how to work within the offense and how the offense will get him the opportunities if he's just patient. So we're running over 19 minutes. Yeah. We need to go. We will be back on Saturday, 2 o'clock. Well, the game starts at 2. We'll be back, after that. But 2 o'clock, obviously, Purdue. And that's really probably the last, maybe Iowa at home you can chalk up as a likely victory. You'd think so, but, the Hawkeyes are tough this year. And after that, that's, Indiana kind of had 2 5-game stretches this year. It just finished one in the Big Ten, and it's about to hit another one after Purdue, where you really just kind of we're going to find out just how good this team is. And right now the answer is probably very good. So for Alex McCarthy, I'm Zach Osterman. You've been watching Inside Indiana Overtime. Enjoy the rest of your week.